Some pain does not shout. It sits quietly in the corner and waits for someone to notice. Aren learned this very young. The house he lived in was always noisy. Doors slammed. Feet stomped. Voices argued and laughed and complained. Yet inside all that sound, Aren lived in silence. He could not speak. His voice had never come, no matter how hard he tried. Doctors once said it might arrive someday. His family stopped waiting. Aren was an Omega, the weakest rank in the pack. In his family, weakness was not forgiven. His father, Dax, believed strength was everything. His older brother, Mira, believed pain was funny when it happened to someone else. Aren learned to walk softly. He learned to look down. He learned that silence made people cruel. Every morning, Aren woke before the sun. He cleaned the floor, washed the dishes, and folded clothes that were never his. If he was slow, Mira kicked the back of his legs. If he broke a plate, Father Dax grabbed his wrist too tight. Aren never cried out. He only swallowed the pain and nodded. They called him useless. They said his silence was a curse. At school, other children whispered. Teachers avoided his eyes. No one wanted the quiet Omega who could not defend himself. Aren spent lunch breaks alone, drawing shapes in the dirt with a stick. He drew houses with open doors. He drew people with kind eyes. He erased them before going home. Home was never kind. One evening, Aren stood in the hallway holding a basket of clean clothes. He stopped when he heard his name. Someone will pay well for a mute Omega, Father Dax said. Aren's fingers tightened around the basket. He's small, Mira replied, but clean. And obedient. Aren's heart beat so hard it hurt. There's an auction tomorrow near the border, Father Dax continued. Alphas always want quiet ones. The basket slipped from Aren's hands. Clothes fell to the floor. No one came to check on him. That night, Aren did not sleep. He sat on his bed and hugged his knees. His room was small and cold. The window was broken, taped shut with old paper. Moonlight slipped through the cracks and touched his hands. Aren pressed his palms together and wished, just once, that someone would choose him. Morning came too fast. They dressed him in plain clothes. No coat. No shoes good enough for travel. Mira tied a rope loosely around Aren's wrists, pretending it was gentle. Father Dax did not say goodbye. The wagon ride was long. Dust filled the air. Aren watched the road blur beneath him. Every bump reminded him that his life was no longer his. The market was loud and crowded. Alpha stood tall, laughing and pointing. Some looked at Aren like he was broken furniture. Others smiled in ways that made his skin crawl. A sign hung above the platform. Omega for sale. Aren felt small. A hand pushed him forward. He stood where everyone could see him. He wanted to disappear. His chest hurt. His ears rang. He squeezed his eyes shut. Then the noise changed. The laughter stopped. Footsteps echoed, slow, steady, heavy with power. Aren opened his eyes. A tall alpha walked through the crowd. His hair was dark. His eyes were sharp and calm. People stepped aside without being told. Whispers followed him like shadows. The Alpha King, someone breathed. King Kale. Aren had heard the name before. Everyone had. The Alpha King ruled the strongest land. He was said to be cold, unkind, unbreakable. King Kale looked at the platform. Then he looked at Aren. Not at the rope. Not at the sign. At him. Aren's breath caught. The Alpha King's eyes darkened, not with hunger but with anger. His jaw tightened. The air felt heavy like a storm holding itself back. Who did this? King Kale asked. His voice was calm. That scared everyone more. Father Dax stepped forward, smiling. My son, your majesty. A mute Omega. He has no use to us. The words landed like stones. King Kale did not smile. He walked closer until he stood in front of Aren. Slowly, carefully, he lifted the rope from Aren's wrists. His touch was warm, steady, gentle. You are not an object, King Kale said quietly. Aren's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever said that to him before. King Kale turned to the crowd. This sale ends now. Gasps broke out. Father Dax shouted in anger. Mira froze in fear. The Alpha King took off his cloak and placed it over Aren's shoulders. It smelled like clean air and strength. You're coming with me, King Kale said, not as a command but a promise. Aren nodded. For the first time in his life, someone had seen him. And for the first time, silence did not feel like a curse. Leaving did not feel real at first. Aren walked beside King Kale through the market, his steps unsure, his heart racing. People moved out of their way. Some bowed. Others stared in shock. The same crowd that had looked at Aren like he was nothing now watched him like he mattered. Aren kept his head low. He expected someone to grab him, to shout that there had been a mistake. He expected Father Dax's rough hands or Myra's cruel laugh. None came. King Kale's cloak was heavy on Aren's shoulders. It dragged a little on the ground, too big for his thin body, but it was warm. No one had ever given Aren something just to keep him warm. The Alpha King did not rush him. He walked at Aren's pace. That small kindness made Aren's chest ache. When they reached the royal carriage, Aren froze. It was large and strong, painted deep black with silver marks of the kingdom. 2 guards stood by the door. They looked serious but not unkind. Aren shook his head slowly. Carriages were not safe places in his mind. Closed doors meant shouting. Closed doors meant pain. King Kale noticed. He knelt in front of Aren so their eyes were level. An Alpha King kneeling shocked everyone watching. "You don't have to go if you don't want to," King Kale said. "But I promise you this, no one will hurt you again." Aren searched his face. He looked for lies. He found none. With shaking hands, Aren nodded. The carriage ride was forcing quiet. The road was long and smooth. Aren sat on the edge of the seat, hands folded tightly in his lap. He flinched every time the wheels hit a stone. King Kale sat across from him, silent. He did not stare. He did not speak too much. He only watched like someone guarding something precious. After a while, King Kale reached into a small box and pulled out paper and a pencil. He placed them between them. "If you want," he said, "you can write." Aren stared at the pencil. He had not written words since school. Even then, teachers took the paper away before he could finish. Slowly, Aren picked it up. His hands shook as he wrote one word. "Thank you." King Kale read it and nodded. "You're welcome." The palace gates were taller than anything Aren had ever seen. White stone walls reached into the sky. Banners moved gently in the wind. The guards opened the gates without question. Inside, everything felt too clean. Too bright. Aren wanted to hide. Servants bowed, but King Kale raised his hand. "No staring," he said. "He's my guest." Guest. The word felt strange. Aren hugged the cloak tighter around himself. A woman with silver hair approached. Her eyes were kind and sharp at the same time. "This is Elder Celine," King Kale said. "She will help you." Celine smiled softly. "Welcome home, child." Home. Aren almost dropped the pencil. They gave Aren a room. A real room. It had a bed with soft sheets, a window that opened, and a table just his size. Aren stood in the doorway, afraid to step inside. "You don't have to sleep here yet," Celine said gently. "Take your time." King Kale left then, saying he had duties. Before he walked away, he paused. "You are safe here," he said again. Night came quietly. Aren sat on the bed, staring at the walls. His body waited for shouting. For footsteps rushing toward him. None came. Instead, someone knocked. A tall alpha with sharp eyes entered. His hair was dark, tied back. His presence felt strong like a sword. "I'm Riven," he said. "The king's general." Aren stiffened. Riven studied him, then frowned, not in anger but concern. "You're scared?" Riven said. Aren nodded. Riven placed a small wooden charm on the table. "If anyone bothers you, show this. They'll answer to me." He turned to leave, then stopped. "You survived something terrible. That makes you stronger than you think." When the door closed, Aren finally lay down. Tears came without sound. But this time they were not only from pain. They were from something new. Hope. Morning did not arrive with shouting. That alone felt strange. Aren woke slowly, his eyes opening to soft light spilling through the window. For a moment he forgot where he was. His body stayed tense, waiting for someone to yell his name or pull him from the bed. When nothing happened, he sat up carefully. The bed was still warm. No one had taken it away. Aren touched the blanket like it might disappear. It didn't. A soft knock came at the door. Aren's shoulders tightened, but the knock was gentle. Once, then again. "It's Celine," a calm voice said. "May I come in?" Aren hesitated, then nodded even though she couldn't see him. After a second, the door opened. Elder Celine stepped inside carrying a small tray. On it were bread, fruit, and warm tea. She placed it on the table without a word, then stepped back. "You don't have to eat if you don't want to," she said kindly. "But your body has been hungry for a long time." Aren looked at the food. He was hungry. Very hungry. Slowly he sat at the table and took a piece of bread. He waited for someone to stop him. No one did. He took a bite. It tasted like safety. Celine watched him with gentle eyes. "King Kale has rules in this palace," she said. "Important ones." Aren paused. "No hitting," Celine continued. "No shouting at those who are weaker. No touching without permission. Aren's hands froze. Rules like that did not exist where he came from. If anyone breaks these rules, Celine said, they answer to the king. Aren swallowed hard and nodded. After breakfast, Celine showed Aren the palace gardens. Flowers of every color bloomed quietly. Birds rested on stone paths. The air smelled clean. Aren walked slowly, afraid his footsteps might break something. Other servants passed by. Some smiled. Some bowed. None laughed at him. None whispered. It felt wrong. It felt good. Later that day, Aren was taken to the training yard. He stayed near the wall, watching alphas train with swords and strength. Their movements were fast and loud. Aren hugged himself, feeling small. That's far enough. The voice was sharp. General Riven stepped forward, stopping the training with one raised hand. The alphas obeyed at once. Riven turned to Aren. You don't belong here, he said. Aren's heart dropped. Not in the noise, Riven finished. Come. Riven led Aren to a quiet corner where the sound faded. He handed Aren a wooden tablet and chalk. Write, Riven said. What scares you? Aren stared at the board. No one had ever asked him that. Slowly he wrote. Loud voices. Closed doors. Hands. Riven's jaw tightened. I see. Riven knelt and looked Aren in the eyes. No one will touch you without your say. Not here. Aren nodded, unsure if he could believe it, but wanting to. That evening, King Kale called Aren to dinner. The table was long. Too long. Aren almost turned back. King Kale noticed and moved to the smaller table near the window instead. He sat first. Aren followed. They ate in quiet. King Kale did not rush. He did not stare. When Aren dropped his spoon, King Kale simply picked it up and handed it back. You don't have to be afraid of me, King Kale said gently. I won't raise my voice. Aren hesitated, then reached for the paper Celine had given him. Why did you save me? King Kale read the words carefully. Because someone should have, he answered. And because I failed to stop people like your family before. Aren's chest hurt at the honesty. After dinner, King Kale showed Aren the balcony overlooking the kingdom. Lights filled the city below like stars on the ground. This is your home now, King Kale said. No one can sell you again. Aren looked at the lights. Then he wrote again. What if I'm not useful? King Kale smiled, small but real. You don't need to be useful to be wanted. Those words stayed with Aren long after the night grew quiet. For the first time he slept without fear. But far beyond the palace walls, anger was growing. Father Dax had lost his money. Mira had lost control. And they were not done yet. Peace is fragile when it is new. Aren learned that on the 5th day inside the palace. The morning began gently. Sunlight warmed the floor. Celine brought paper and taught Aren new signs with his hands. He laughed once, soft and surprised, when he made a mistake. The sound startled him. It had been a long time since laughter lived in his chest. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then the guards ran. Boots echoed through the halls. Voices rose, not angry but alert. Aren's body reacted before his mind did. His hands trembled. His breath came fast. The pencil slipped from his fingers. Celine noticed at once. She placed a hand over his, light and steady. You are safe, she said. Stay here. But Aren's eyes had already found the open door. He knew that fear. It had a shape. It had a face. Outside the palace gates, 2 figures stood shouting. Father Dax. Mira. Aren watched from behind a pillar as King Kale stepped forward. He stood tall, calm, unmovable. General Riven was beside him, hand resting near his sword. This Omega belongs to us, Father Dax yelled. You had no right to take him. The words sliced through Aren like cold air. Mira pointed at the palace. He's broken. He's useless. He brings shame. Aren's legs weakened. King Kale did not raise his voice. He belongs to no one, the Alpha King said. Least of all to those who hurt him. Father Dax laughed bitterly. He's mute. He can't even deny it. Something inside Aren shifted. Slowly he stepped forward. Celine gasped softly. Riven turned at once. Aren. Aren shook his head. His hands were shaking, but he lifted the wooden tablet Celine had given him. With effort, with courage pulled from deep inside, Aren wrote. I'm not broken. He stepped into the open. The crowd fell silent. Mira stared shocked. You're lying, he snapped. You don't even talk. Aren wrote again. Silence is not weakness. King Kale watched him, not stepping in, not pulling him back. Trust shone in his eyes. Father Dax's face twisted. We raised you. Aren's hand shook as he wrote the truth. You hurt me. You sold me. You never loved me. The words hung heavy in the air. Riven took one step forward. That is enough. King Kale raised his hand. The law has heard. Guards moved in. Father Dax shouted. Mira tried to run. They were stopped. Aren did not smile. He did not cheer. He only breathed. When they were gone, the world felt quiet again, but different. The silence was his now. That night, Aren sat on the balcony alone. The sky was dark, filled with stars. His hands rested in his lap. His heart felt tired. Footsteps approached. Riven sat beside him, not too close. You were brave today. Aren shrugged slightly, then wrote. I was scared. Riven nodded. Bravery usually is. A moment later, King Kale joined them. He placed a warm cup in Aren's hands. You spoke louder than words today, the king said. Aren looked up at him and wrote one more line. I don't want them to hurt anyone else. King Kale's expression softened. They won't. The Alpha King looked out over his kingdom. Healing takes time, he said. Revenge does not have to be cruel to be strong. Aren leaned back against the chair, feeling something new settle in his chest. Strength. Not loud. Not violent. Quiet. Steady. Real. For the first time, the past had faced him and stepped away. But deeper inside the palace, hearts were changing. And love was beginning to take shape. Healing did not come like magic. It came slowly, like morning light that crept into a dark room, one small line at a time. After the day his family was taken away, Aren expected the fear to return. He thought the palace would feel unsafe again. He waited for nightmares, for shaking hands, for the tight feeling in his chest. Some of it did come. But something else came too. For the first time, Aren was allowed to decide how his day would begin. Celine asked him what time he wanted to wake up. A servant asked what food he liked. King Kale asked if he wanted to walk in the gardens or stay inside. No one forced him. That alone was healing. Each morning, Aren practiced writing in signs with Celine. His letters became clearer. His hands grew more confident. Sometimes he made mistakes and laughed at himself instead of shrinking. You are learning how to stay, Celine told him one day. Aren tilted his head and wrote. Stay where? Celine smiled. In safety. In your own body. That thought stayed with him. King Kale began inviting Aren to sit with him during quiet meetings. Aren did not have to speak. He only listened. Sometimes King Kale asked his opinion and waited patiently while Aren wrote. What do you think should happen to the village near the river? Aren wrote carefully. They need food more than punishment. King Kale read it, then nodded. I agree. Aren felt something warm bloom in his chest. His thoughts mattered. Riven showed up often too, sometimes pretending it was only duty. He brought Aren small things without saying much. A wooden carving. A soft scarf. A cup that fit perfectly in Aren's hands. One afternoon, Riven asked, Do you want to learn how to defend yourself? Aren hesitated. He didn't like fighting. He didn't like loud movements. He wrote, Only if it's quiet. Riven smiled slightly. I know just the way. They trained early in the morning before the palace woke. No shouting. No crowds. Just slow movements, balance, and breathing. Riven taught Aren how to break free from a grip, how to stand firm without striking back. You don't need to hurt others to protect yourself, Riven said. Strength is knowing when to stop. Aren liked that. One evening, a festival filled the palace courtyard. Lights glowed. Music played softly. Aren stood at the edge, unsure. Crowd still made his chest tight. King Kale noticed and offered his arm, not pulling, just offering. Aren took it. They walked slowly through the lights. People bowed, but King Kale waved them away. Tonight we're just people, he said. Riven followed a few steps behind, watching carefully. At the center of the courtyard, children laughed and played. One small Omega tripped and began to cry. Aren moved without thinking. He knelt, offering a hand and a gentle smile. The child stopped crying. Something clicked inside Aren. He could give comfort. He could be kind. He was not empty. Later that night, Aren sat between King Kale and Riven on the palace steps. The air was cool. Fireflies drifted nearby. Aren wrote slowly, carefully. I'm scared this will end. King Kale read it first. He did not laugh. Nothing lasts forever, he said honestly. But what we build can stay with you. Riven added, and we're not going anywhere. Aren looked at them, two strong alphas who did not fight over him, who did not demand, who did not control. For the first time, Aren wondered what love could be like. Not loud. Not painful. Not forced. But chosen. Far away in a cold room, Mira sat in anger. He blamed Aren for everything. He whispered plans to himself, dark and bitter. The past had not finished breaking yet. But Aren was no longer the boy who waited to be hurt. He was learning how to stay. Betrayal does not always come with sharp words. Sometimes it comes smiling. The letter arrived on a quiet afternoon. Aren was in the garden, practicing writing under the shade of a tall tree, when a servant approached King Kale with a sealed message. The king's expression changed as he read it, not with anger but with caution. "What is it?" Aren wrote when Kale looked his way. King Kale hesitated, then answered honestly. "Your family has asked for mercy. They wish to speak to you." The pencil paused in Aren's fingers. His heart remembered pain before his mind could stop it. Riven, who had been standing nearby, stiffened. "This could be a trap," he said. "They've already shown who they are." "I know," King Kale replied. "But avoiding the past forever can also be a wound." Aren swallowed. He wrote slowly. "I want to hear the truth." Riven searched Aren's face. "And if they lie?" Aren's hand trembled, but he wrote anyway. "Then I will know it was never my fault." The meeting was set in the palace hall. Guards stood ready. Celine stayed close. King Kale sat beside Aren, not above him. Riven stood behind, watchful. The doors opened. Father Dax entered first, dressed neatly, his back straight. Mira followed, eyes sharp and calculating. They bowed low, too low. Aren felt his chest tighten. "My poor son," Father Dax said, his voice sweet like spoiled fruit. "We were wrong. We were confused. We want to make things right." Mira nodded quickly. "We were scared for you. We only wanted to protect the family." Aren looked at them, really looked. Their eyes did not hold regret. They held fear of loss. He picked up the chalk. "Why now?" he wrote. Father Dax smiled wider. "Because we love you." The room went very still. Aren's hands shook as memories rose. Locked doors, hunger, rope burns, laughter that hurt. He wrote again. "You never loved me when I cried." "Why now?" Myra's mask slipped for just a moment. "Because you're important now," he snapped, then stopped himself too late. Riven's eyes narrowed. King Kale did not move, but his voice was ice. "Say that again." Mira fell silent. Father Dax cleared his throat. "What my son means is, we didn't understand your worth." Aren felt something crack. Not pain. Clarity. He wrote one last line. "You don't want me. You want what I have." The words landed heavy. Myra's face twisted. "Fine," he hissed. "You think you're special now? A broken Omega hiding behind alphas." Before anyone could move, Mira lunged. Riven reacted instantly, stepping between them, sword drawn but not striking. Guards grabbed Mira, forcing him back. Aren didn't scream. He didn't freeze. He stood. His legs were shaking, but he stood. He wrote each word steady. "I'm not broken. I survived you." King Kale rose to his full height. "This meeting is over." Father Dax began shouting, begging, cursing. The guards dragged them away. When the doors closed, the silence felt different than before. Aren's knees gave out. King Kale caught him. Riven knelt immediately, checking his hands, his breathing. "You did well," he said firmly. "You faced them." Aren shook his head, tears finally falling. Celine knelt too, holding his shoulders. Betrayal hurts most when we hope it won't happen. That night, Aren couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, hugging his knees. The past felt closer again, like cold air sneaking through cracks. Footsteps came quietly. Riven sat beside him without a word. After a moment, King Kale joined them. Aren wrote in the dim light. "Why does it still hurt?" King Kale read it slowly. "Because part of you hoped they would change." Riven added, "Hope doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Aren wiped his eyes and wrote again. "I don't want revenge. But I don't want to be small anymore." King Kale smiled gently. "Then you won't be." The Alpha King looked out over the sleeping kingdom. "True revenge is living freely. And justice will come." Aren leaned back against them, feeling their warmth, their steadiness. The betrayal had failed. But it had revealed something important. Aren no longer needed their approval. He had already outgrown them. Revenge is often loud. It breaks things. It burns bridges. It leaves scars that never close. But the kind that came for Aren was quiet. It began with the law. After the failed meeting, King Kale did not rush. He did not shout orders or swing power like a weapon. Instead, he called the council. Papers were brought out. Records were opened. Witnesses were called. Neighbors, traitors, teachers who remembered a silent Omega boy who was never protected. Aren sat beside Celine during the hearings. His hands rested on his lap, fingers curled tight. He listened as strangers spoke his pain out loud. He was locked outside in winter, one woman said. He never had shoes, said another. We reported it once, a teacher whispered. No one listened. Aren's chest felt heavy but also lighter. The truth was no longer trapped inside him. When it was his turn, the room grew still. Aren stepped forward with his board and chalk. He wrote slowly, carefully, making sure his hands did not shake. I was not silent because I was weak. I was silent because no one protected me. No one interrupted. King Kale stood. The law is clear, he said. Abuse of an omega. For sale. Lies for profit. The council bowed their heads. The judgment came without anger. Father Dax lost his land and title. Mira was stripped of rank and sent away to work under watch. Their names were recorded, not in shame but in truth. When it was over, Aren expected to feel joy. He didn't. He felt calm. That surprised him most. Later that day, Aren returned to the gardens. He sat under the same tree where he once practiced writing. The leaves moved gently above him. For the first time his thoughts were quiet too. Riven joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed one to Aren without speaking. After a while Riven said, "You could have asked for harsher punishment." Aren nodded, then wrote, "I didn't want to become them." Riven smiled, proud. "You didn't." King Kale arrived soon after. He did not sit above Aren. He sat beside him the same way he always did. "The council sees you differently now," the king said. "As someone strong." Aren looked down and wrote, "I still feel small sometimes." King Kale read the words and nodded. "Strength doesn't erase fear. It teaches you how to stand with it." That evening the palace held a small gathering. Not a celebration, just a moment of peace. Lanterns lit the paths. Food was shared. Laughter stayed soft. Aren stood at the edge watching. A servant approached, holding a tray. "Would you like to help?" she asked. Aren blinked, surprised. He nodded. Together they handed food to children, elders, travelers. Some bowed to Aren with respect. Others smiled like he was just another person. Both felt good. A small Omega boy tugged Aren's sleeve and pointed at the chalkboard. "Can you write my name?" the boy asked shyly. Aren knelt and wrote it carefully. The boy beamed. Something warm spread through Aren's chest. Later that night, Aren stood on the palace balcony, looking out at the city lights. The kingdom felt different now. Not perfect but fairer. Riven leaned against the railing nearby. "You changed things today," he said. Aren wrote without looking up. "I just told the truth." "That's how change starts," Riven replied. King Kale joined them last. He rested his hands on the stone railing. "There is something you should know," he said. Aren turned. "The council wants you to become a voice for other Omegas," the king continued. "Not to speak but to represent. To be seen." Aren's breath caught. He wrote slowly. "Me." King Kale smiled. "Who better?" Aren looked out at the city again. He thought of the boy he had been. The silence that once trapped him. The fear that once owned him. He wrote one final line. "I think I'm ready to try." The Alpha King placed a hand over his, warm and steady. Riven nodded. "We'll be with you." For the first time, Aren understood what revenge really was. Not pain returned, but power reclaimed. And the story was not over yet. Love was growing. Choices were coming. And Aren's heart was about to be tested in ways silence never could. Love did not arrive all at once. It came quietly the way healing had, slow, careful, and real. After the council's decision, Aren's days became fuller. He met with other Omegas who needed help. Some were shy. Some were angry. Some were just tired. Aren listened to all of them. He wrote for them. He stood beside them when words failed. People began to recognize him, not as the mute boy who was sold, but as the Omega who understood. Still, when night came, his heart felt confused. King Kale and Riven were always there. King Kale showed his care and patience. He waited. He listened. He never pushed Aren to move faster than he was ready to. When Aren grew tired, Kale noticed before Aren did. He brought calm like a steady river. Riven showed his care and protection. He stood close in crowds. He watched Aren's hands for signs of fear. He never hovered, but he never left. His presence was like a shield, quiet, firm, reassuring. Aren felt safe with both of them. That scared him. One evening, Celine found Aren sitting alone in the library, staring at a blank page. "You're thinking too hard," she said gently. Aren smiled weakly and wrote, "What if choosing hurt someone?" Celine sat across from him. What if choosing yourself hurts no one? Aren looked down. That night a storm rolled in. Thunder echoed through the palace halls. Aren's body reacted before his mind could stop it. His breath came fast. His hands shook. Before fear could pull him under, 2 doors opened at once. King Kale entered from one side, Riven from the other. They stopped when they saw each other. Aren stood between them, heart pounding. King Kale spoke first. I heard the storm. Riven nodded. Me too. Neither moved closer. Aren raised his board with shaking hands. Please don't fight. The room stayed quiet. King Kale's voice was calm. We won't. Riven added, not over you. Aren's chest tightened, not with fear but with emotion. He wrote again. I care about both of you. I don't know what that means yet. King Kale read the words slowly. It means you're honest. Riven nodded. And brave. They sat with him through the storm, one on each side, not touching unless Aren leaned first. The thunder faded. Aren's breathing slowed. Something settled inside him. The next morning, Aren made a decision. He asked King Kale and Riven to walk with him to the old training yard, the quiet one where Riven had first taught him to stand strong. When they arrived, Aren took a deep breath and wrote carefully. I don't want to choose by fear. I don't want to choose by pressure. I want to choose by trust. King Kale watched him closely. Take all the time you need. Riven added, we're not going anywhere. Aren's hands stopped shaking. He wrote the truth he had been afraid to face. I don't want to lose either of you. I don't want to be owned. I want to be chosen, and choosing. The air felt heavy then light. King Kale smiled, slow and thoughtful. Then we will walk this path together if that is what you want. Riven crossed his arms, then relaxed them. No chains. No demands. Aren's eyes filled with tears. Not from pain. From relief. He stepped forward and for the first time took both their hands, his own choice, his own timing. Neither alpha pulled. Neither alpha claimed. They stayed exactly where he placed them. Later that day the palace buzzed with whispers. Some were confused. Some disapproved. Some were curious. But when King Kale stood beside Aren in public and Riven stood on his other side, no one dared to insult what was built on respect. That evening, Aren stood before the mirror in his room. He saw scars, some visible, some not. But he also saw someone new. Someone who had survived. Someone who had been chosen. Someone who had chosen back. Outside the palace walls, far from the light, Mira watched the city burn softly with lanterns. His punishment weighed on him like iron. He clenched his fists, hatred boiling. If I can't have power, he whispered, I'll ruin theirs. The storm was over. But the final test was coming. The announcement was not loud. It was not shouted from towers or carried by drums. It was written. King Kale ordered notices placed across the kingdom, on palace gates, village boards and market walls. The message was simple and clear. Aren, the Omega of the palace, will speak to the people. Many were confused. Some laughed. How can a mute Omega speak? They asked. Aren read the whispers from a distance. His hands trembled but his back stayed straight. You don't have to do this, Riven said quietly as they stood backstage in the great hall. King Kale nodded. The choice is yours. Aren looked at both of them. He thought of the boy he used to be, the one sold, ignored, erased. Then he thought of the Omegas who watched him now with hope in their eyes. He picked up his board. I'm ready. The hall filled slowly. Alphas, betas, Omegas, elders, children, all gathered. The room buzzed with curiosity. When Aren stepped forward, the noise softened. He did not stand on a high platform. He stood at floor level among them. King Kale introduced him with only one sentence. Listen with your eyes and your hearts. Aren took a breath. He raised his board. I was born without a voice. People decided that meant I had no worth. The room went silent. My family hurt me. They sold me. They said silence meant weakness. Gasps moved through the crowd. Aren's hands shook, but he continued. I survived because someone chose to see me. Because someone believed silence could still carry truth. He looked up, met eyes one by one. I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for change. King Kale stood behind him. Riven stood beside him. Not guarding. Supporting. Protect Omegas. Listen to those who cannot shout. Silence is not nothing. For a moment no one moved. Then someone bowed. Then another. Soon the entire hall followed. Tears filled Aren's eyes, not from fear but from release. Outside the palace the response spread quickly. Laws were reviewed. Watchers were assigned to protect vulnerable packs. Teachers were trained to listen in new ways. Aren's silence had become a movement. But shadows do not fade easily. That night, as Aren returned to his room, a figure slipped through the outer gates. Mirror. Thin. Angry. Desperate. He carried a blade, not for killing but for chaos. If he could not rule, he would ruin. Guards spotted him too late. A shout rang out. Riven moved first. Aren heard the noise and froze. His body remembered old fear, but he didn't run. King Kale reached him in seconds. Stay here. Aren shook his head. He ran. In the courtyard, Mira stood cornered, blade shaking in his hand. You took everything from me. Mira screamed. You should have stayed silent. Aren stepped forward. Slowly. Bravely. He lifted his board. I was silent because I was afraid. I'm not anymore. Mira lunged. Riven disarmed him in one smooth movement. Guards restrained him. The blade hit the ground with a sharp clatter. Mira fell to his knees, sobbing, not in regret but defeat. Aren watched calm. King Kale placed a hand on Aren's shoulder. It's over. And this time, it was. As Mira was taken away for the final time, Aren felt no hatred. Only closure. Later, under the night sky, Aren sat with King Kale and Riven on the palace steps. The kingdom slept peacefully below. Aren wrote one last line. I think I finally spoke. King Kale smiled. Riven nodded. Yes, Riven said softly. You did. One chapter remained. Not of pain, but of beginning. Some stories end with fireworks. Some stories end with quiet sunlight spilling across the floor. Aren's ended, and began, like sunlight. The palace was peaceful that morning. Birds sang softly outside his window. The wind carried the faint smell of flowers and clean stone. Aren sat at his desk, holding his board and chalk. He smiled faintly at the words he had written the night before. I finally have a voice. Felt true. Not because he could speak but because the kingdom had listened. The people had seen him. The Omegas had hope. And most importantly, he had chosen himself. King Kale entered without knocking as he often did. Good morning, he said quietly. His eyes, calm and strong, met Aren's. How are you today? Aren picked up his pencil. He wrote carefully. Ready to live. Riven appeared in the doorway behind Kale. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, smiling faintly. Aren's heart warmed. Two alphas, steady, strong, protective, both here for him, not demanding, not controlling. Just there. Kale read the words and nodded. Then we will walk together. No fear, no chains, only trust. Riven stepped closer, keeping a hand lightly on Aren's shoulder. And courage, he added. Never forget your own strength. Aren closed his eyes. For years he had been silent. Ignored. Sold. Forgotten. Now he had family he chose, family who chose him back, and a place he could call home. The sun rose higher, spilling gold across the stone floor. Aren looked out over the balcony, seeing the kingdom he had helped change. He thought of the Omegas he had met, the children who laughed under the palace trees, and the people who finally understood that silence does not equal weakness. He wrote one last line for the day. I am Aren. I am seen. I am safe. I am loved. Kale and Riven read it together, their smiles soft, proud, and full of warmth. Aren reached for both their hands. Not because they claimed him but because he chose them. They did not pull him closer. They stayed where he placed them, steady, supportive, protective, loving. Outside the palace, the world continued. Shadows of the past remained, but they could no longer touch him. Mira was gone. Father Dax was powerless. No one could erase the boy who had learned to stand, to fight quietly, and to trust. Aren turned back to the balcony. The light hit his face. The wind brushed his hair. For the first time he felt the quiet peace of being truly alive. His silence had not been a curse. It had been the space where courage grew. Riven spoke first, softly, almost a whisper. You've changed more than yourself, Aren. You've changed us all. King Kale nodded. And you will continue to change the kingdom. Aren wrote a final message on his board. This is only the beginning. The two alphas squeezed his hands gently. Aren felt warmth, safety, and love in that simple touch. He looked at the kingdom below and then at the sky above, knowing he had survived the worst of betrayal and pain, and that he would never be silent again. Some voices are quiet, yes. Some voices are gentle. But some voices, like Aren's, carry the power to change everything. And in that quiet, steady power, Aren finally found home, family, and love.